What I have for you today is a Dutch Supreme Court case about this magnificent vehicle here. As you can see, this is a ocean heavy lifter, and when we say ocean heavy lifter, we mean ocean heavy lifter. If you look at the yellow structure on the right side of the slide, that is a platform, an ocean platform. I'm not sure if it's a drilling platform or an oil platform, but to give you an idea of the size of everything, look at the platform itself and look at the far right, and you will realize the platform itself is big enough to have a helicopter pad. So we have a ship that is carrying another vessel that is big enough to have its own helicopter pad, which just puts into perspective the size of this thing. Now, this belongs to a Swiss company called All Seas, and the vessel is called the Pioneering Spirit. It used to be called the Peter Scheldt, and as you can see here, it says it's the largest construction vessel in the world. It was inspired by the offshore heavy lifting pioneer Peter Scheldt Herema and designed completely in-house. The vessel is designed for single lift installation and removal of large oil and gas platforms and the installation of record weight pipelines. The emergence of Pioneering Spirit signifies a step change in offshore installation and decommissioning, capable of lifting entire platform top size of up to 48,000 tons and jackets of 20,000 tons in a single piece. She significantly reduces the amount of offshore work associated with installation and decommissioning work, moving the work onshore where it is safer and more cost effective. So when a platform is decommissioned, this vessel lifts it out of the ocean and takes it to the port where it can be dismantled. And I looked at one of their projects in Norway, where the preparation obviously took much longer, but the actual lifting of the platform out of the water onto the vessel took, I think, 9 seconds. Quite significant. And then the vessel itself is also built to install record weight pipelines in all water depths with an S-lay tension capacity of 2,000 ton. I have no idea what that means. She surpasses the Solitaire as the world's largest pipelay vessel. The Pioneering Spirit commenced pipelay operations in the Turk Stream project in the Black Sea in summer of 2017, despite laying a 32-inch pipe at depths of 2.2 kilometers. She consistently averages 5 kilometers per day. I think this is incredible. So the question about this vehicle, the tax question about this vehicle is does it qualify for international transportation? Right? Is this something that transport in international waters? And the case that we will look at is a case from the Dutch Supreme Court. As I said, it's from 24 December 21. And what happened here was you had a Dutch resident and citizen working on this vessel, and the question was, I mean, if you work on a ship in international transport, then you're taxed in the country where the management of the vessel is situated, and otherwise, obviously, this person would have been taxed in the Netherlands. So let's have a look at the decision itself. Now, if we look at the facts of the case, it is relatively straightforward. The interested party lived in the Netherlands in 2014 and 15, so he was normally taxed in the Netherlands on his worldwide income. As of 1 April 2014, the interested party is employed by ASA, so now we know that's All Seas, established in Switzerland. He performs his activities on ships of BSA, I assume a subsidiary, yes. The head office of B is in Switzerland. B provides offshore services to clients in the oil and gas industry. The main services are the laying of pipelines on the seabed and the removal of platforms. The interested party, so the taxpayer, worked in 2014 and through 15 on board a vessel used for lifting and moving large platforms and the laying of pipelines for oil and gas transport. Now, this is obviously the vessel that we've been looking at. The ship was built at a yard in South Korea and was transformed to Q from November 2014 for completion. So it was transferred to, so it was first built in Korea and then it was moved to Q, which I assume is either in Holland or in Switzerland. We don't know. And there it was converted. The ship was docked in Q on January 8, 2015, the ship set sail for the first time in 2016. Now, I'm not quite sure where these preparations were made. Obviously, they were not made in Switzerland because Switzerland is landlocked. But whether they were made somewhere in the Far East, for instance, Singapore, or whether they were made in Europe, I'm not quite sure that the port of Rotterdam is equipped for jobs like this. But we simply don't know. In any case, the court doesn't say that Q was in Netherlands, right? In 2014 and 15, the interested party did not perform any work in Switzerland, and his wages received from A over those years are not included in the tax there. So he was on board of the vessel, but he was not on in Switzerland. Is the way we read I read the case, and this is important because it comes back to some questions after the decision. If we look at what the Swiss-Dutch treaty says from 2010, so it's relatively modern. Article 15, dependent services, paragraph 1 and 2 talks about the tax in the resident state, and then the 183-day rule, and then paragraph 3 says, notwithstanding the preceding provisions of this article, remuneration derived in respect of an employment exercised aboard of a ship or aircraft operated in international traffic or aboard of a boat engaged in inland waterways may be taxed in the contracting state in which the place of effective management of the enterprise is situated. Now, this is important because the question then is if this is a ship in international traffic. It's also important in the sense that this is the treaty is from 2010, but it's already outdated, right? Because in 2017, the OECD changed Article 15.3 such that sailors are now taxed basically in their states of residence and not the state of the operation of the ship anymore. But this is what the treaty says. And then if you look at Article 8, which deals with shipping and inland waterways, it says profits from the operation of ships or aircraft in international traffic shall only be taxed in the contracting state in which the place of effective management of the enterprise is situated, right? So this is what the treaty says. And then the court talks about this, and it says, referring to the comments of Article 3.1e, which is definitions, and Article 8 of the 2008 OECD Model Convention, the court held that the ship was not operated during the years 2014 and 15 for the carriage of persons or goods in international traffic. Okay, and in addition, the court points out that during construction or completion period in 2014, the ship spent more than 10 months at the yard in South Korea, and then in 2015 in the port for almost an entire year. And this port must be Q, wherever that is. Although it can be assumed that persons and goods were transported during the shipment of the ship from South Korea to Q, this concerns a specific transport movement during the construction phase of the ship with a view to its outfitting. So the court basically said, and this was an appeal court because there were 3 courts involved in this case, said, you know what, this ship is being built, it's not in international transport, so you cannot claim that you can use Article 15.3. And you'll see the Supreme Court takes a different twist on this. But first, let's see what the OECD said. In OECD 2008, Article 3, definitions read, for the purpose of this convention, unless the context otherwise requires. The term international traffic means any transport by a ship or aircraft operated by an enterprise that has its place of effective management in a contracting state, except when the ship or aircraft is operated solely between places of the other contracting state. So if you are in international transport, then and you're operated between states, then you're fine, right? And if you look at Article 8, shipping inland waterways and air transport, profits from the operation of ships in international traffic shall be taxable only in the contracting state in which the place of effective management of the enterprise is situated. Now international traffic, what I'm also curious about here is whether, for instance, if you don't move from one country to another, but you only stay in international waters always, whether that would be international traffic as well. You could move things from the international waters of South America to the international waters of Norway, for instance. And the question is, would that be international transport as well or not? But let's go on and see what the court says here. The court says first, the second complaint of the taxpayer argues that the aim and the scope of Article 8 and 15.3 of the treaty entail that the wage costs of employees during the construction or completion of a ship and transport movements prior to its first commercial activities fall within the scope of the latter paragraph. So this is what the court says. And then the court goes further and it says it follows. It first says that we need to look at the OECD commentaries because these are important. And then it says it follows from the OECD commentary on Article 15 of the 2008 OECD Model Convention that this allocation rule is related to and based on the principle of Article 8 of the 2008 Model Convention. The allocation rule included in that article for profits and operation of ships in international traffic refers, according to the OECD commentary, to profits directly related to commercial transport of persons and goods by ship in international traffic. So the court puts a lot of weight on directly related, right? And related and ancillary activities. Given the great significance of the OECD commentary for the interpretation of the convention, the foregoing also applies to the interpretation of Article 15.3 of the convention. And this makes sense, right? What applied for Article 8 should apply for Article 15.3. And then if we look at what Article 8 says, it says the profits covered consists, or in the first place, of profits directly obtained by an enterprise from the transportation of passengers or cargo by ships or aircraft in international traffic. Shipping and air transport enterprises invariably carry on large variety of activities. The paragraph also covers profits from activities directly connected with such operations, right? And this paragraph looks like it fits what the Supreme Court says, you know, that it must be direct and some ancillary activities. But there is also an Article 4.1, paragraph 4.1 in the commentary, and paragraph 4.1 says any activity carried on primarily in connection with the transportation of passengers or cargo by ships in international traffic should be considered directly connected with such transportation. Now to me, this text stretches the meaning of international transportation. It makes it a little wider than what the Supreme Court seems to imply here, and this makes a difference. So let's see what the Supreme Court goes on to say. It says the facts established by the court allow no other conclusion than that the ship is intended for the lifting and displacement of large platforms and the laying of pipelines for oil and gas transport, and that any transport of persons or goods on the ship is ancillary to the main activity. Then it cannot be said that the results from the operation of the ship are directly related to the commercial transport of persons and goods by ship in international traffic. The question of whether Article 15.3 of the Convention applies during the construction phase of a ship needs no discussion. This complaint fails. So this is what the Supreme Court said, right? It said we don't need to care. We don't need to look at whether Article 15.3 and Article 8 applies to the construction phase of a ship and its maiden voyage before its first commercial voyage. And to give some full disclosure here, the OECD commentary does very clearly say, you know, that the activities of a shipyard is not covered by Article 8. But this is not the activities of a shipyard. This is the activities of a shipping company whose ship is still in the yard being completed, right? So and I don't quite know whether that makes a difference. But the Supreme Court says, you know, we don't even need to look at that question, because you're not transporting goods in international traffic. Now, I would argue that the moving of a rig is transporting goods in international traffic, right? And this case, I think, brings up a couple of very interesting questions. So let's have a look at some of them. The first one is the Supreme Court concludes that Article 15.3 does not apply. But what does that mean? I mean, does the 15.3, does that then mean that you're back into Article 15? And if you are back into Article 15, what does that mean? To me, it seems like you must say, well, you're back in Article 15, 1 and 2. You are a resident of the Netherlands, so you're taxed in the Netherlands, unless you are working in another country for more than 183 days. Now, if you were at the shipyard in Korea for more than 183 days. Maybe you were taxed there. You should have been taxed there. If you were on the ship, which had a Panamese flag at the time, it later changed to a Maltese flag. Does that mean you were in Panama? There's a lot of questions here which are not answered, and it is a pity. But the outcome of the case simply is you're taxed in Holland. And then the second, is the question, was the taxpayer right in claiming that 15.3 includes costs during construction, completion, and pre-commercial voyages? Now, as I said, the OECD says something about shipyard activities, but it doesn't say anything that supports the taxpayer's point of view here. And I'm curious to know what this is based upon. But in any case, the Supreme Court dodged that question. And then we get the activities of the ship. Now, first of all, let's talk about pipelines. Does laying of 5 kilometers of pipes every day not include transportation as much as laying? Or does leaving the pipe behind exclude transportation? So we've got two things here. You pick up something in one country. Clearly, if it's going to be a 200-kilometer long pipeline, someone's got to bring it the first 100 kilometers in order to lay the second 100 kilometers. Is that transportation or not? And then, of course, the second question is, well, if you only moved it 50 kilometers and laid it down, and then moved another 50 kilometers and laid something else down, is that still transportation? Or is the fact that you take it from country A, but you don't bring it to country B, or at least most of it does never arrive in country B, does that mean that it's not transportation? That is I find an interesting question. And then the final question for me is, if a platform is moved from international waters, e.g. 200 kilometers off the shore, offshore of Norway, this is a real task that the ship has had, to a Norwegian disposal yard, is that movement of this rig or the platform from 200 kilometers offshore to onshore, from international waters into the economic zone and into territorial waters, and finally into a disposal yard, is that not transportation of a good? And if the ship is built to be used for that, should the ship not then qualify as a ship in international traffic? The fact that it uses there's a lot of nuances to this question, right? The one would be, if the ship is in a Norwegian economic zone and then is brought into the Norwegian territorial waters, does that mean that it's not international? And if you're out of the economic zone and into the international waters, you have to be in international waters outside of the economic zone in order to bring it in. Or if you sail it in and on your route you sail from the Norwegian economic zone into the UK economic zone and back into the Norwegian economic zone, and then to the Norwegian territorial waters, which is the first 11 sea miles offshore, is that international transportation? Yes or no? And otherwise, if you take this thing from Norway to Finland to go and drill there, or Sweden or something like that, or the UK more likely, is that international transport? I think all in all, it's an interesting case. I think the court was a little too quick. Maybe that's because it was the only point that was brought to the Supreme Court, and the other points were already settled between the taxpayer and the lower courts, or the taxpayer and the tax inspectors. But all in all, an interesting case which seems to leave more questions than it gives answers. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to our next case that we'll discuss next time. A 10-second commercial. If you want to learn more about international taxation or transfer pricing, or treat yourself to an all-round update, or if you want your team to learn or stay updated, please visit my online courses.